Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever the fuck you're tuning in. This is our first full week of NBA regular season here on the Buckets broadcast here, brought to you by Backyard Sports. Bentley, how you doing, man? Better than Cody Zeller in more ways than one?
Yeah, man. I feel really good. I'm well rested. Jason Tatum and I took the fourth quarter off last night just to
Yeah,
get some well needed load management, but I feel really good.
yeah, that 50-point drubbing of the Pacers. They really missed Halliburton last night, I guess.
Yes, they did.
Ryan, how you doing, man?
Uh, I guess I'm doing as well as Cody Zeller. I don't know. I haven't asked him, but I figure I'm doing pretty well. I don't get paid as much, but I think roughly equal.
Yeah, nice.
Close. I'm getting there one day.
One day.
Well, let's jump into some news here out the gates before we get to the actual action on the court. We finally have a resolution in the Daryl Morey, James Harden national media standoff. James Harden goes over to the Clippers. They get to keep their man, literally Terrence Mann, who was kind of the make or break asset that the Clippers didn't want to give up. I know we talked a little bit about that. Like, it didn't make a lot of sense that they were going to give up Harden to keep Terrence Mann, but in the end, they got their way. So I'm going to go to you first, Bentley. Talk to me a little bit about fallout from this. How do you see this working out for both teams? We know the history of the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and now they add Harden. Are we going to get enough out of those 3+ Russ to really make a difference there in the West?
Yeah. So I was on Second Spectrum earlier before we got on this pod, and according to Second Spectrum, after this trade went through, the Clippers are now projected to finish with the second best record in the NBA, which is very strange to me, given the track record, like Gary said, of the Clippers going all the way back to like the Lob City days of just their superstars not being able to stay healthy and available down the stretch of seasons. That being said, James Harden is a player who plays games. He plays a lot of games every single year. So I've thought long and hard about this, and I kind of like this deal from both sides, simply for the fact that when James Harden is bought in, he plays a lot of games and he plays at a high level. And was his desired destination, right? So I think that we're going to get a bought-in James Harden for the remainder of the season. Now, what that looks like on a basketball court where there's only one ball and you got three other guys on that court, less so nowadays. Russ, he's kind of adapted to the facilitator role nicely there in LA. But Kawhi, who had 18 in the first quarter last night, was just on an absolute tear. And then we know what PG can do. He's as streaky a scorer as it comes, right? But he can heat up with the best of them. Is James Harden going to be okay standing in the corner and watching those two guys kind of do their thing? Or is he going to do the pound the air out of the ball for 22 seconds and then play hot potato at the closing seconds of the shot clock and hope that somebody can get him an assist, right? On the reverse side of that, I did like it a lot for Philly, simply because Tyrese Maxey is playing at an all-star level, right?
Yeah.
He won offensive player of the or he won player of the month, or player of the week, rather, excuse me. It's only his first week this season, but he won player of the week in the Eastern Conference. That's a conference that has a lot of top-end talent. And for Maxey to be playing the way that he is currently, if they get a full season of that, I think Philadelphia will be just fine. They get some rotation guys. They get a lot of cap flexibility and some draft picks to play with. But it's one of those rare, like, I understand it for both sides, and I kind of like it, if I'm honest.
Yeah, in terms of the return too, I was a little surprised that they gave up PJ Tucker. I have always kind of viewed him as something they thought was kind of an important piece to that rotation. A savvy vet, a gritty guy who can knock down a corner three, get you some rebounds and play some kind of gritty defense. Not a great defender, but he's a guy who's willing to stick his nose in there. But then I see what they got back, right? I mean, it's kind of a wash between him and Morris. Maybe you could kind of call it that. Nick Batum, I think, is a guy who can give you a little bit of 3-and-D still late in his career. Do you think the Sixers ended up adding enough back? Because they were going to go without Harden anyway, right? They were on to Tyrese Maxey. So essentially, Harden wasn't even a roster piece. Do you think they got enough back in return on this from what they got back from the Clippers?
So whatever you trade a player of James Harden's caliber, you're never going to get equal value back, right?
Right.
I think that they did as best that they could given the situation at hand. Obviously, I would have liked it a little better if they got Terrence Mann back in the deal, but the Clippers kind of dug in their heels on that. You know, the super valuable 27-year-old rotation player that no team can go without, apparently. It's
not at least not the sister team in LA. That's
like my NBA power rankings currently are Tyler Hero 1, Trey Man 2, everybody else after that, right? But I do like what they got back because it affords Philly flexibility that they did not have prior to making this deal.
Yeah, that's a good take. Yeah, Dad, just to kind of swing back on this, I think that is the concern, right? When you add a bunch of superstars to a roster, it's always, how's it going to work out? How many balls can you play with, right? You only have one on the court at any given time. Who's going to be – because we saw it with the Heat, right? We talked about Chris Bosh kind of taking the back seat to, LeBron and D. Wade even kind of ceded a little bit that it wasn't necessarily his team anymore. Who's going to be that guy in LA now? Or are they just going to, as I think it was PG who said it kind of very directly, like, we're grown men. We're going to figure this thing out and make it work, right? If they can do that, you've got a lot of superstar talent there for sure on that roster. All right, Ryan, I want to get your thoughts here on this trade. Win, lose, did they both make out? Is this kind of, a way for everyone to walk away from this feeling pretty good about what happened here?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of dynamics with this that you could talk about. You could even just within the trade with Harden, but also how that affects like a guy like Joel Embiid and how he feels about it. What I will say first is I enjoy watching these legacy Rockets shaking up the NBA. It's I get to relive the glory days of the last 10 years through trade talks between other teams. And everyone always said James Harden is not the guy, but everybody apparently wants to trade for him. So I remember when people were, they didn't love him in Houston because of the way he played. But a lot of fan bases have loved him and hated him very quickly after that. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think it's cool that they got all the LA guys together. I also just like outside of basketball, I think that's kind of cool. Like I think it's 4 LA, got like all 4 of their stars are from the LA area, I believe. Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty cool. When do you see that ever like on an NBA team, especially stars of that caliber outside of like the 1950s when they had regional picks?
And UCLA dominated that.
And as far as on the court goes, I think the Clippers, did all right. You don't have to pay too much for a guy who's on an expiring deal. I think that's kind of what people are forgetting, that, he could be gone right after this if he wants to be. So Philadelphia was never going to get back that much, and Clippers were never going to have to pay that much. They just had to match the salary and throw in, a first or 2, which is basically what they did. So I like the trade for them. I thought the Clippers were treading water at this point. I think this, as I say all the time on here, and it probably annoys people who listen, that they increase their odds of winning the championship and also increase their odds of, being the 8th seed because they reduce their depth by a lot and put a lot of risk on guys, like Bentley said, that sometimes don't play. James Harden plays, but they needed those guys like the Marcus Morrises of the world when, Paul George is not playing. I just say
not less Bamba, Mo Bamba.
Give the people what they want.
This guy knows basketball.
I heard one time that you could play Mo Bamba on the loudspeakers in a cemetery, and the graves would open up and the dead would start dancing.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I think it's good for the Clippers. I think Philadelphia did all right. I think that Joel Embiid is the big wild card. Like, how does he feel about it? Right? If he's probably happy Harden is gone, but does he feel like he has enough to win? There is the question. With the way Maxi's been playing, he probably feels like pretty good about it. And Maxi is not really a ball dominant guard. You know, he's a guy who runs up and down the floor. He shoots and scores, but he doesn't need to dribble around to do that. So that probably plays into Embiid's preferred play style. And the guys that got in the trade will be serviceable enough to like contribute to that play style. So from a how he wants to play perspective, I think it's really good. It's just, does he feel like it's enough to win? I still think they have a good team. That would not, I say this a lot, not be a team I'd want to play in the playoffs. Tobias Harris can play. Tyrese Maxey is as good as he looks, and a lot of people thought he was going to be. They got enough to cause problems. And the East is tough, but I think they're still probably a top 4 team, you know, as I like to say.
But
so
are they a top 4 team in the West?
You know, maybe. Could be. There's about 12 top 4 teams in the West.
I was going to say, we had about a dozen of them last week. So.
But yeah, I think that's like really the interesting part for Philadelphia is how does Joel Embiid feel about it? I think he's going to be okay. It's really just going to, if they can get to like the Eastern Conference semis, he probably like feels all right and like competitive. But, you know, how long do you keep him is the question, because I think that's a little bit of a ticking time bomb.
So I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts, and Ryan, we'll go back to you first on this. From a play style perspective, we've covered Philly, right? They were already moving on, and they're starting to figure out what post Harden is, who they're going to be. When you look at the Clippers, that's not a roster that I think we've traditionally or historically seen constructed in the way that a James Harden roster has been, right? A lot of pick and roll with kind of shooters on the wings. That's not a roster that's built that way. How do you see this playing out with Harden? Is he going to be, Bentley kind of alluded to it, is he going to be the guy controlling the tempo of the offense, pounding the rock, and just kind of finding someone near the end of the shot clock? Or are we going to see him playing a lot more off guard? I don't really know. I'm curious what your thoughts are, Ryan, on what you think that might look like in LA, because it's not traditionally what we've seen Harden thrive within, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think that brings up a good point. And I think James Harden throughout his career has never played with any wings of the caliber that he will now be playing with, which is, you know, what you're talking about. I think that is a really interesting dynamic as far as play style. In his peak, he played with Durant, but they were not in his.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Yeah, I'm talking about the current iteration of Harden.
Okay.
Is what I'm talking about. Like from his peak to now is what I'm talking
You're
about.
not wrong, Bentley. But
yeah, I mean, I know he played with Kevin Durant. Yes,
just making sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that you know, he's learned to play a certain way, and again, his preferred style is interesting. He's played with, you know, Dwight Howard. He's you know, played with a lot of rim running bigs. Clint Capella is another guy. And a lot of shooters around him, but not necessarily guys that can do the things that a Paul George can do or a Kawhi Leonard can do. So yeah, I do think that's really interesting. I think that he still is going to want to be ball dominant. I don't think that's a guy that's going to move without the ball a ton, but I also don't think that team needs that necessarily. Like, I think it's going to be a lot of one-on-one stuff with that team just because they have so much one-on-one talent. You can't guard like those 3 guys one-on-one. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
So I don't think they need it necessarily. Do I think it's perfect fit? Probably not. But as I say, talent finds a way. I'm pretty sure that's a Jurassic Park quote, right? Talent finds a way.
Exactly how it was said in the movie.
Yeah, I think they'll be all right. I do think that is interesting, though, right? Can he adapt to the wings being as dominant of a force as they are? You know, with his heliocentric preferred style.
Yeah, for sure. Bentley, do you have any additional thoughts on that? I know you were kind of the first to allude to him being so dominant on the ball. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm going to come at this from an optimistic perspective, which is not how I normally approach things regarding the Clippers and James Harden, right? I really want to believe that this is going to work. I fully believe that James Harden will have the ball the most out of these guys on the team. I think they probably pivot to Russ almost exclusively running the bench unit. The way I envision it going, right, is you stagger between those four guys. So you have Harden on the court when Russ is not, and vice versa. And then you just play them with one of the other two guys, and you just run a shit ton of pick and roll, right? You run Paul George screening for James Harden. Obviously, Harden's not going to screen for anybody, but whatever, if he has the ball, that's not that big a deal, right? You find ways, you become innovative enough to make it work, because James Harden, for all of his flaws, for the 4 trade demands, for the playoff collapses, whatever, he is a basketball savant, and he's been able to figure out an offense everywhere that he's played. Last year he led the league in assists. Like, that doesn't, you don't stumble into that.
Yeah.
Like, this is a guy that understands the game of basketball on a level that most of us will never even comprehend, right? So I really, really want to believe that this is going to work out, and they're going to find a way to have an efficient offense, because they have efficient scorers on the court, mostly James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. But when you have James Harden setting up your offense, that rising tides raise all boats, right? So it raises the offensive efficiency level for the rest of the guys on that court. I think it's going to work. I'm excited to see it play out. I fully expect them to stagger minutes, which plays into the hands of them wanting to load manage as well. You bring Kawhi down to like 32 minutes a game, 33 minutes a game, whatever, and you just balance the level of the court and the minutes these guys are playing, the load they're taking every night.
Yeah, for sure. I think the one kind of final closing thought too is this is where he wanted to be, right? If there's ever a time he's going to figure it out, this is where he wanted to be, and I expect he's going to be, at least in as much as James Harden can be, I expect him to be all in, right? In wanting to make this work, playing with friends, playing back home, essentially. Excuse me, sorry, I'm still kind of lingering, but just that, right? He wanted to be here, so I think it's something that to be said that this was his preferred destination.
Yeah.
You got a Cody Zeller reference.
Yep. 1.7 rebounds,
1.7 in 5 minutes this season.
His per 100 is going to be nuts if you
Oh,
look at it
yeah.
that way.
Yeah, playing low minutes like that, you can get a high per 100 for sure.
Crazy.
All right, well let's shift gears here. Let's start talking some on-court action. Bentley, I want to go your way first. Give me kind of one takeaway you had from this first week of basketball. I know last week we had like 3, I think, games to talk about, and then we were really getting into the big action post-show last week. We had, I think, a dozen games playing. So between then and now, each team has played about 3, maybe 4 games. Talk to me a little bit about your first takeaways here from our first week.
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll try to narrow it down. I'll try to talk down to the audience here. There's, at the current moment in the NBA, there's a 2-way race for the best team in the NBA. I think it's firmly on Denver or Boston. That being said, this is the best start to a season that I think Luka Doncic has ever had.
Yeah.
He is freaking killing it right now. He's averaging like 34 and 10. And I'm not sure the assist number. I apologize for that, but it's got to be 7 or 8, right? He is locked in right now. That team is good defensively because Luka is playing defense. He's not playing on-ball great defense, right? But he's helping on weak side. He's crashing the boards on defense, not just leaking out for outlet balls. We know he's a great offensive rebounder because of his positioning on the floor, right? But this guy is freaking playing at another level right now. And I'm excited for it. It brings me joy to see that team playing as well as they are. Ryan's guy, Josh Green, is getting more minutes than we first talked about last week, right? Derek Lively has moved into the starting role already a week into the season. They're going to get some guys back that'll help with their depth. They'll be healthier down the stretch of the season. But I love the way that Luka is playing the game right now. And it's not only Luka. Kyrie also looks good, but he hasn't made a peep. You know, he's doing the early season Kyrie thing where he's blending in, he's playing the game. But for some reason, it's the two dominant ball guard thing, the two ball dominant guard offense, right, is working in Dallas. Maybe better than we've seen it work anywhere else in the past. So I'm excited for this Dallas team. To me, they look really, really good. And like Ryan likes to say, that's not a team I would want to see in the playoffs.
No, and we talked about it last week, right? If Luka was going to be as engaged as he was to start the season, he's probably the MVP, right? And you to nail that home, he's 0.2 of an assist shy of a triple-double right now. He's 34, almost 11 and 9.8 or 10.5. So 34, 10.5, and nearly 10 assists. So engaged Luka is fun to watch, man. He is maybe the best player in the world right now at this very moment. It's hard to argue against him. Maybe you've got Jokic still, right? Jokic is still.
That's Tyler Hero and Trey Mann.
Tyler Hero, Trey Mann.
Then everyone else. Yeah.
But yeah, he's off to a really great start. Ryan, what do you think about the Mavericks being one of the last two in the unbeatens, right? Because Denver went down the other night, and we've got Boston, we've got Dallas left, and Luka's killing it. It seems to be working with Kyrie. Hopefully that remains the whole season. But what do you think?
First thing I'll say, the funniest part about Bentley's tier list is that Terrence Mann is so irrelevant. We're calling him Trey Mann.
Yeah. Sorry. My apologies.
Oklahoma City Thunder legend Trey Mann.
There's so many men in the NBA. It's hard to keep them separated.
I just find that unintentional joke funnier because we're talking about him not being available in the Harden trade, but we don't even say his name correctly. We don't feel as strongly about him as the Clippers do, you know.
Clearly.
But, hey, you know, he's not bad. We'll give him some credit. Yeah, Luka's pretty good. I guess that's really my my opinion on that. I don't think anything's crazy there. I do think. Yeah, I think last week I mentioned he was taking a step up defensively, like you said, Gary. I do think that is noticeable. His attitude's been pretty good from the games I've watched, and I think I don't think he has like a bad attitude, but he can get a little whiny. I think we all know that. He's looked pretty good. I think, you know, winning cures all ailments a lot of the time. Really so if they go on a losing streak, you know, I reserve the right to rescind my statement on his attitude. Yeah, I think that's a big part. Being engaged, better attitude, being with a guy like Kyrie. And he's looked good without him, too, because he didn't have him last game as well. And other guys have stepped up, right? Tim Hardaway's stepped up.
He's shooting the ball like crazy right now.
Yeah. Derek Lively's looked pretty solid. We talked about as well. I think he gives enough defensively and at the rim for what that team needed. The length that they haven't had in a long time, in a very, very long time. Yeah, I think the team's built better for him. And he's had a great start to the season. Obviously came in shape is another thing too. So yeah, I think it's for Luka, it was never about the skill, the talent. It was about the things on the edge, right? And I think he's starting to hone in on the things on the edge. Which some people will never have the talent and are good on the edge. He just is now focusing on that part and maturing, I think. And I think that's a big deal for him. And it's scary for the rest of the league, I think. Because you got probably another 5 years of him at his peak. And if that's what it looks like, it's a little scary for sure.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, give me one of your takeaways from week one here.
So I have a couple, but I'll hit my hometown team first. I just want to say my guy, Alperen Şengün, looks like a top 10 center in the NBA right now. And center talk is what this podcast is about. So I decided to bring him up. He had one of the nastiest passes I've seen from any player yesterday, where he was like almost near the circle and like turned to look like a kick out to the corner and threw behind the back pass like 3 feet away from him that hit the guy in the pocket. That's extremely difficult for anybody to do that. He did that no look, from a big guy. He might be pushing Sabonis as the second best passer big in the league at this point. They might be in the same ballpark. Obviously, Jokic is on a different planet, I think, still. But getting 5 assists from your center and a lot of looks. Honestly, if the Rockets just shot a little better, he'd probably have probably another assist and a half or so. Yeah. Big leap, really good offensively. I think he's looked good defensively in drop coverage. I think Ime Udoka's put him in a decent spot. And that was always a concern with him was, can he play the defense? But, if you're going to get 17, 8, and 5, and then like an average defender, like that's a legit player. And he made Mark Williams look silly yesterday. I think Mark Williams got him one time. He did block him one time, but Şengün is amazing because he jumps an inch off the ground and does these like scoop shots, and they just go in every time. I don't know how he does these little flick shots. So I just want to give him a shout out because I think he's been great, and I think Houston needs him to be great to do something.
My fantasy team appreciates him. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, my categories league, I love him. You get a lot for him. You sack a little on the rebounds because he's not a great rebounder for his like size because he's a little undersized for his position. But you take the assist with it. So
yeah, he fills it up. That's for sure. Yeah, just to circle back on this comment, I think that's the concern, right? And Ryan, you mentioned it. While they're winning, I think everything's going to be great. If they go on a losing streak, that might be when we see, piss pants Kyrie and whiny Luka come back out. But right now, everything looks good because they're undefeated. They haven't lost a game yet, and everybody's playing nice over there and feeling good. Bentley, what do you think out the gates here? Give me another take, unless you want to rebut on Ryan's hometown Rockets.
I love Alpi. I'm a big fan of unathletic people playing sports against people that are way more athletic than them, mostly because I did that for so many years. And he's undersized for his position.
Yeah.
A thing that I deal with on a continual basis through my life. Thing. Yeah, well, I'm a talking first off. So,
sorry. Yeah. You're undersized for every position.
Yeah. If I was 6'2", a whole different ballgame, Being only 6'1", I very much struggle with these things.
6'2", we'd be covering him on this podcast.
If I was as tall as Cody Zeller, I would be a star in the NBA.
That's fair.
But no, I think Alpi is currently the best player on that team. There's kind of a jumble behind him for who's going to be second best, right? It's probably Fred VanVleet, another player who's undersized for his position. They just have a lot of small guys on that team. Yep. Jalen Green has looked good. I believe he's better now than he probably has ever been, which makes sense, right? Kind of progress through your after career. But I think it's a positive sign that he's playing as well as he is. Now, the team very much struggles defensively. That's why they brought in Ime Udoka to kind of fix that on the defensive end. But I like the talent they have on this roster. I think we all kind of talked about it this offseason. I think they have a lot of high potential guys on this team. But as of right now, I think Alpi is very clearly the best player on that team almost every night they take the floor.
Yeah. It's not a bad thing to have your center be your best player either. Just ask the Denver Nuggets.
Yes, very much so.
Especially the guy who can distribute.
Yep.
Talk to me, Bentley. Another takeaway from week 1.
Yeah. So we've talked about some of the best teams in the league, right? Boston, extremely good. Scored 155 points. Denver, the reigning NBA champions, only lost 1 game so far. Dallas, 5-0, right? All of these teams, extremely, extremely good. There is another team in the NBA that is extremely, extremely bad right now. In fact, it is the team that has, by second spectrum analytics, they are the worst offensive team in the NBA. That is the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, I will caveat that by saying they're missing 3 of their most important players, right? Ja is out for 23 23 or 20 more games, right? They're 0-5.
Yeah, 20,
Yeah.
22 more, something like that.
Yeah. Steven Adams out for the season. Brandon Clark, their backup big, out for who knows how long. He's recovering from a torn ACL. They made moves this offseason to try to. Now, they didn't know that Steven Adams was going to be gone, so they didn't really address that, right? You can't knock them for that. But they made moves this offseason to try to patch piece something together to hold them until Ja got back. And it simply is not working. We all three here really like Desmond Bane, what he brings to the court as a scorer. He's a lights out shooter. He's a dog defensively. He's extremely athletic. He looks like a running back.
He does.
Like he can when he gets going downhill, it's tough to stop, right?
Yeah.
The issue is that they have no one to run their offense. Mm-hmm. They're a team right now they run a very slow paced offense, and they have no one to set up their half court offense, so it becomes very inefficient. They also struggle defensively, which is wild because Ja is not someone you think of as like a strong point of attack defender. And with Jaren Jackson bringing up the back end, he's an elite defensive guy, got it. But apparently, without the athleticism of Ja to be rangy on the perimeter on the defensive end, granted, he'll get blown by, he'll get lost on defense, whatever, but he brings a level of athleticism where he can catch up to plays in the paint and affect shots and close out on guys rapidly. They struggle on both ends of the court right now, and they look very, very bad. And I'm glad that I bet on the under because I feel like that ticket is going to cash in freaking January.
By All-Star break.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they're you don't expect Ja to just come in game 26 and just be a world beater, right? He is one of those guys that can be that, but you have to figure he's going to have some rust on the, on the chain there for a little bit. They might be out of it by the time it matters, right? By the time Ja's playing good basketball, because they are a bad team right now. And I had said the Wizards were probably going to be head and shoulders the worst team in the NBA. If they shut Ja down because they're out of it, this is the worst team in the NBA. I don't expect them to do that. I'm just hypothetically saying, like, if they don't get Ja back and he makes a difference for them, whenever Brandon Clark comes back, I think they miss Steven Adams maybe more than anybody but Ja, at least, maybe even more than Ja in a lot of ways, because they are a mess defensively. They're getting out rebounded like crazy. They can't compete. They have no real toughness on that roster, which is what I thought when they traded for Marcus Smart, that they might be able to replicate a little bit of that. But they're as you put it, they are a really bad basketball team right now. Ryan, any silver lining for the Grizzlies other than let's just get to game 26 and hope this thing turns around?
I'm glad Bentley brought this up because I think they did make a move that will help them. And as this is center talk, they did sign Bismack Biyombo, who I think is pretty good. And I think he kind of is going to do the things they want him to do, right? They need a presence inside. Jaren Jackson Jr. is probably not that presence. Does a lot of the things that you want offensively. He blocks shots, can play the perimeter. Not a great rebounder. Doesn't get physical with a ton of people. He likes he likes the weak side blocking, that type of stuff. So I think Biyombo is a big body that's going to give them some run. And every year he gets signed like some time into the season. He's never like on a team, and he looks good every time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is like people are like, oh, he's really old. He's not really that old. I think there was like some, classic issues of like, how old is he actually stuff. I don't know. Stuff. Yeah. I mean, I don't ever like, what can you do? Like, you sign the guy, he can play, like whatever, like who cares, right? He's getting 1-year deals. So who cares? So I think that's going to help him out. I think they've looked bad in some games and like okay in spurts. I think they'll be all right. I don't think this team's that bad. I think they have guys that are getting minutes that they just need some development from, like a Zaire Williams, a David Roddy type. I think Jake LaRavia, who I really like Jake LaRavia. That's a guy I think can play. He can do a little bit of everything. I think they have that. It's just what's the rotation look like? Who's going to be the guy handling the ball? Is it going to be Desmond Bain? That's the stuff you got to figure out. I think this is such a new team. It's hard to really throw the book at them at this point. And a lot of people go, oh, well, they have two of their three best players available still. It's like, yeah, but the rest of the team is basically brand new. Not necessarily to the team, but to the rotation. So yeah, I think it's too early to say anything about it. I think they'll be all right. And if they can, you just got to get to the dance, right? And if they can get to the dance, not a team I'd want to play in the playoffs. That's what I'd say.
It is what you would say. Yes, it's exactly what you would say, actually.
Yeah, we talked about the Cavs. I expect them to be in the top four team in the East.
They currently are without. They're without their point guard, which is not good for them. Darius Garland got hurt in the opener,
and Jared Allen.
And Jared Allen, yeah, and they've missed all of the games since. I do expect them to kind of flip the script. They're 2-3 right now, so they're definitely not out of it by any stretch. It's hard to be out after 5 games, but I expect them to kind of turn it around once they get their full myriad of players on the court.
Yeah,
they're good.
He's one of the best young point guards in the league, and just absorb that for sure.
Yeah,
Garland will be back though. They'll be all right. I think they'll be fine in the East.
Case in point, Memphis.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Ryan, let's go back to you, man. Another takeaway from first week action here.
Yeah, I have I love drafts. Y'all know I love the draft. I'm going to talk about a guy who I think was a steal of the draft, Trace Jackson Davis with the Warriors coming out of Indiana. A guy who I thought was a late first, maybe early second, depending on how the draft played out, because he was a little bit older, right? I believe he played 4 years at Indiana. Man, he's looked good for the Warriors in the little bit of time they played him. He's been really good. I thought he was good in the preseason too. And I just want to say it's really obnoxious, these guys who are like way more talented than like a second round pick, a Austin Reeves player, like these guys who are clear contributors, and they're like, I don't want to get drafted, or if I get drafted, it needs to be by this already really good team. Clearly, Trace Jackson Davis did this. He probably got with his agent and was like, I'd like to play for the Warriors, right? As a big, I think there was playing time available for him. Draymond was, getting older. You expect him to miss some time. Kevon Looney, obviously, they're competing for minutes. But Trace Jackson Davis is looking good. And it's just another good move by the Warriors. It's really annoying because I hate the Warriors. I've said this many times. But good for him. And because this is, a center podcast, I decided to bring up Trace Jackson Davis as a very good draft pick for them.
I love it. Yeah, and in another point on the Warriors, they seem to at least out the gates have a grip on kind of how that rotation is going to work. I know we talked, Steve Kerr made the, I don't know, maybe half joke that they had 6 starters, but they seem to have kind of figured out the rotation. Steph Curry looks like he found the fountain of youth in the offseason and just remains an unbelievable, otherworldly, alien talent. Almost maybe he's shooting the ball better than he ever has in his career. Just killing it out the gates. And they were 3-1 the other night. I believe that's the record, so they haven't played between then and now. But good start for them out the gates. They seem to have figured out the rotation. Bentley, what are your thoughts there?
I'm so happy that you brought up Trace Jackson Davis. I love Trace Jackson Davis, and I'm not even a Big Ten guy. I watched so much freaking Indiana last year because I was just captivated by Jalen Hood-Schifino. But he wasn't even the best player on the team. Trace Jackson Davis was a consensus first-team All-American last year. He's the all-time leading rebounder and shot blocker in Indiana University men's basketball history. Like, that dude is not a scrub. He's a very good basketball player. Yeah, he's a little bit older. Got it. But the NBA used to draft older guys first. That's how that worked because they're ready-made to come into the NBA. And he will continue to get better, right? I believe he's 23, which is not old by any stretch of the imagination. There are guys that come into the NBA at 19 and we say, oh, they're only 23. Okay, that's still young. Why is a guy who comes into the NBA at 23 super old? Like, it doesn't mean your potential just runs out. I love Trace Jackson Davis. I thought it was a great pick for them. Whenever it was kind of a roundabout way that he ended up there, but I believe he was technically drafted by Washington, which, would love to see him in Washington, but hey, I'm happy that Ryan brought him up because he's getting a little bit of love. He was a phenomenal college player, and he really is fitting in super well there in Golden State. And like Gary mentioned, they seem to have figured out that rotation early in the season. Moses Moody looks like a stud in that offense, running with the second squad. Clay is playing very, very well. Obviously, Steph is freaking Steph. We know what he's going to bring. And they convinced somehow Chris Paul to come off the bench for the first time ever in his career.
It ain't a bad deal to have a Hall of Fame point guard coming off the bench.
Right. Even though he hasn't won anything, but whatever, not a big deal.
It would be great to be 23.
It would be, it would be phenomenal to be 23. Am I right? But I love Trace Jackson Davis. I think he's phenomenal. Do I think he's going to be an all-star one day? Probably not, but he's going to be a very good contributing role player on that team, and he's going to continue to play very, very well with that second unit, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Bentley, give me another one of them notes you got over there.
Yeah, so I hate to be like the Debbie Downer guy, but it kind of seems like that's what I'm morphing myself into at this point. Miami's 1-4. Are we worried at all that they're punting too hard on the season and just waiting for the playoffs? Like, they're not playing. Yeah, they got to get there first. Absolutely. They're not playing Nikola Jovic as much as I thought they were going to. I'm never going to question Eric Spoelstra and his decision making. He's the best coach in the NBA. I'll give him whatever flowers he wants. We all kind of shouldn't have traded CC. Oh my god, dog! I'm better than Cody Zeller. Okay, like they should have just paid me to come play this season. Regardless, they brought in Thomas Bryant, who's better than Cody Zeller. I don't think their issue is at center. Their issue is with having dynamic players that score the ball.
Yeah, they don't have any.
They don't have one. Jimmy does that 3 times every playoff series.
You get one,
right?
You get one a quarter in the regular season.
Yeah. I really, really think that they struggle with a lack of athleticism in Miami. Tyler Hero is obviously the best player in the NBA, but he's not the best player on his team. Somehow that works out. No, Tyler Hero is a fine player, but he's not a guy that can carry you through a regular season.
Right.
He's an add-on piece, right? Jimmy Butler, we've said it a million times, he's not going to carry you through a regular season. Kevin Love is a very good player still, but like again, they don't have that guy that really drives the motor of this team. And I didn't think they were going to be great this year, but boy, I did not expect them to get off to a start like this.
Yeah, I think I was the most negative about them when we did the over-unders. And I'll say they are who I thought they were going to be, honestly. I thought they were bad. Ryan, I know you were pretty negative about them as well. But
I'm a noted Miami hater. I just want it to be known.
Yeah, but I mean, I had them regressing by like 7 or 8 wins from last season even. So
yeah, we all didn't like them that much.
We didn't. That's for sure. I'm feeling pretty good about that under right now. But I think this is kind of what maybe we should have expected from a team that went so far all in on the trade that didn't happen. And this is the roster that they've got left. And as you said, they don't have much dynamism on that team at all. Bam can kind of be that guy a little bit once in a while, but he's not a guy who's going to just give me the ball and I'm going to make it happen. Jimmy Butler can't be bothered with the regular season. So what do they have left? I mean, Kyle Lowry's not that guy anymore. Tyler Hero's certainly not that guy. Duncan Robinson's not that guy. The best shooter they had on the team last year is playing in Cleveland right now. I don't know what they've got left on that roster that's really going to get them over the hump of a long regular season. Is it going to even out? Maybe it'll even out, and by the end of the season, we'll be talking about another play-in trip for Miami. And everybody will be worried that they're going to knock off the 1 seed again. But I don't know. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
They're not very good. I will question Eric Spoelstra. I have no problem doing that. I only punch up on this podcast. I don't punch down. Uh,
You're a Houston fan, so the only thing you can do is punch up.
True. That's except for down to Memphis. That's the only.
Well, yes.
I think they need to start thinking about the things they don't have, and I think Bentley brings up a lot of good points about some of their offensive issues. Jimmy Butler's old, and I don't know if his game translates like amazing as he gets older. I don't know. I guess he's like a crafty guy, and a lot of people probably think he does, but he does rely on a lot of his physicality to move guys and get small amounts of space to take a lot of those like goofy baseline jumpers he likes to take. So I can see, a little bit of a decline there. Bam's great. I think Bam's good. I think this team is like okay, but yeah, give it to Orlando Robinson. I just think this team's bad. I mean, like you said, Gary, I think we both hated on this team a lot. I hated their draft. I do think they should play Jovic more. He's not going to help them win probably, but like I think they need to start thinking about what they have in him because he's an offensive guy, and that's probably why they're not playing him is because he's not much of a defensive player. I think they're getting close to like purgatory. And I talk a lot about team purgatory a lot, but like they're like one bad move away from that. And I think they have been for a long time. I just think they've gotten really lucky. The ball has bounced their way. I mean they are. They have a lot of money tied up on this team.
Yep. In mad players.
Yeah, I mean they're fine, right? Like if they make the playoffs, it wouldn't surprise me, right? Like I'm not saying they're an awful team, but it wouldn't surprise me again if they're a play-in team again. Actually, I expect them to be probably. Yeah. I don't really get the hype. It's like, oh, it's playoff Jimmy Butler, and I'm like, is that like a thing? Like I know historically there's been guys who have been better in the playoffs, like a Bill Russell or something, but like Jimmy Butler's not Bill Russell. So
that is
like,
true.
You
Factually
have to
accurate.
The Boston Celtics won a lot of games in the regular season. Like they were the 1 seed, a lot of their championships. They were the 4 seed one year, but like pretty much every other year they were like the best team in their conference. There's not really a lot of comparisons where a guy is like not good and not in the regular season and just lights it up in the playoffs. So I've never believed in the allure of the Heat. I do think Spoelstra's a great coach. I just I don't see it. I don't see it on the roster. They'll probably sneak out a win or two just because of Spoelstra. But like, how much is a great coach worth in wins? Like
couple
three,
yeah,
4, and he's got to have a roster to do it. So maybe even less than that in that situation.
Yeah.
So I hate it, and I hate their roster, and I hate what they've done to themselves.
No, you don't. You hate Miami.
I don't hate Miami. I just don't. The city is not my favorite place in the world because I'm not a party guy, and it's fine.
Sure, but you do love the state of Florida, as you've stated many times.
I do.
I will say to your point of them being one move away from kind of roster purgatory, this is the same franchise that we saw give Tyler Johnson a big deal, right? And then immediately move off of that. They had Richardson in the building. He was awful, and they moved off of that. Like, this is historically a franchise that has been able to maneuver their way out of bad situations, right? After the big three all left, we thought it was kind of over. And it was for like a couple seasons. That's when they did the Johnson deal, and like they had kind of some floating pieces. But they've been to the NBA Finals 2 of the last 4 years. Or the last 3 years, rather, right? It's like, I understand your point of them being one move away, one injury away from purgatory. But they are one of the most nimble and agile front offices in terms of roster construction and being able to get themselves out of sticky situations that the NBA has ever seen, honestly. So I get your point of them being very close to being in a bad spot, but that almost seems like that's where they operate at their highest level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no doubt that Pat Riley and his office are trying to do things to make this team. I expect them to be doing that. I just think the bill comes due eventually, right? And this team has operated on the fringe of for so long. I don't believe that people can be outliers statistically in their talent evaluation for decades. Like that's just not something that people do.
Yeah.
They have periods where it happens, but I just don't think that that's a thing that they have. I think they've gotten lucky and are maybe a slightly better, and luck has accelerated that. But maybe the trades they make, but they're not really great trade partners. They've been pretty bad trade partners recently. Like they don't want to trade literally anything.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, I think regression to the mean is expected here, and their mean was already really low in the regular season. They have not been a good regular season team, so regression means they're barely a playoff team.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on it. I understand. I respect Pat Riley and what his office is doing, and would it shock me if they're back in the finals again? Yes, but not that much.
Well, Ryan, let's stick with you, man. Talk to me a little more about week 1 here.
Well, I didn't write much else down, but I will say I do want to do one thing. I know we're getting near the end here. It was in the chat here. Bob Knight passed away. I think that's a loss for the game. Bob Knight, one of the legendary coaches. Yeah, really sad. I remember Bob Knight announcing. Also, throwing chairs at people, just seemed like the sweetest guy who also would rip your head off. And as laid back as I am, I can respect someone that isn't in the exact opposite way, in their own unique way of dealing with things. I also want to say Walter Davis passed away, an NBA legend for the Suns. He had some drug issues that really hurt him a lot, but he was a 18 6 and 4 guy in his career. Very good player. I think if drugs were prevalent all through his career, all through the NBA. So if that didn't get him, he'd probably be a Hall of Famer with the way his trajectory was going. And we actually opened a pack today, and there was a Walter Davis card in it. So we did that today, and I just wanted to give them a shout out to two legends of the game, and they will be missed.
Yep,
for sure. Still the last coach to take a team start to finish undefeated and win the championship. Bob Knight.
Somewhere Bob Knight is buried with his ass in the air so his haters can kiss his ass.
Yep. What a goodbye fucking speech from Indiana. And I saw earlier today, real quick, today that, ESPN kind of did the highlight on the fact that he ended up reconciling and going back to Indiana way too late in his life. And I think he would be the first to kind of tell you that. It didn't end well there. He was as rigid and as caustic as he had been his entire tenure in Indiana, but culture changed, people changed, and he wasn't winning games the way he was in the 70s and 80s when he was throwing chairs at everybody. So things change, and things didn't end well there in Indiana. I remember the moment when he went back and they covered it, and it was a really, really cool moment. He got super emotional. They were chanting his name, and it was well received. I'm glad that he reconciled before passing, because he is Indiana basketball, right? In my eyes, he's Indiana basketball. I know Indiana had success prior to Bob Knight, but in my eyes, in my lifetime, he's Indiana basketball. So
for sure.
Great to see that. But go ahead, Ben.
There was a story. It's been circulated many times, I'm sure, but I saw it resurface again this week. Michael Jordan's draft year, Bob Knight was talking to the Trailblazers GM, and he said, Bob Knight told the GM, he said, "You better draft Michael Jordan." And the guy was like, "Well, no, we need a center. We've got our roster. We just need a big man. And Bob Knight looks at him and goes, fuck it, draft Michael Jordan, play him at center. I mean, it's just an all-time quip there. Like,
He knew, man. He knew how good Michael Jordan was.
This is the best player, and he's going to be the best player to ever.
Portland did not fucking listen.
Nope.
Boy. All right, Bentley, back your way. What notes you got left for me? What alibis you got before we make our picks for Thursday night and get on our way?
I will give you options. I'll take a poll here. Would you guys like for me to speak on Milwaukee, or would you like for me to speak on the Pelicans?
I find the Pelicans more intriguing.
Okay. All right. So my note, I'll give you the Bucks note really, really fast because I'm not going to expound on it, right? MJ equals center. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Einstein. Just an interesting note also from Second Spectrum. Just throughout the first week of the season, the Milwaukee Bucks have the worst defensive rating per 100 possessions in the NBA. Just thought that was interesting. We don't have to talk about it. I'll move on to the New Orleans Pelicans.
We kind of knew that with Lillard coming into town, right? And they Drew Holiday, and they're going to be much more focused on the offensive side.
I do think they will get better as the season goes along, but I thought that was an interesting fact. So New Orleans last night goes down by 22 in the second quarter on the road in Oklahoma City. They end up coming back and winning the game. I watched this game start to finish. What I thought was the most interesting part of their comeback was the largest part of it, and the spark of their comeback happened when Zion Williamson was on the bench. They played this game without Brandon Ingram, without Trey Murphy, and without Jose Alvarado, and I think one other guy who I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Jordan Hawkins played a ton of minutes in this game, and he looks really freaking good. Now, I get it. At one point, they missed 19 three-pointers in a row. It was almost painful to watch. But those started going down, and this comeback came to life, right? Their offense started sparking. They started getting stops on the defensive end because Oklahoma City couldn't just get out and run the fast break, where Josh Giddey looks phenomenal running a fast break in Oklahoma City. I mean, that dude is playing incredibly right now, and I love it. But the note I have written down is that the Pelicans' offense does not move the ball enough when Zion is on the floor. And he is not a good enough passer to be a heliocentric player the way that we talked about James Harden being for so many years in Houston. The reason that Houston was able to play the way that they were, and you'll remember the year they just didn't have a center, they played PJ Tucker at center, was because James Harden was such a good drive and kick player. Zion is elite at a lot of things. Passing the ball is not one of them. He's a good passer, but he's not an elite drive and kick player. And when he's on the court, unless Willie Green calls a timeout and draws a play up for another offensive player, which they did a couple of times, and they got, I think, 2 wide open looks for CJ McCollum at like the wing with Zion setting a pick, right? The ball kind of sticks with Zion Williamson. That is not something that we're kind of used to seeing happen with him. I don't love the look of their offense with Zion on the court, and I feel very dirty saying that because there's not a bigger Zion fan than myself.
Yeah, it's not what we've seen from this offense in the past either with Zion on the floor. They have been much better at moving the ball around. I don't know what's caused it. I watched one of their games last, I think it was Friday. They played, and I caught their game. Maybe it was their first game last Thursday, but it did feel a little stale on offense, and like they're all kind of just standing around waiting for Zion to just be this world beater, and that's not how an NBA offense can run. It's never been successful doing that, right? It doesn't matter who it is. You can't just be that. You have to be ready to contribute. And Zion's not LeBron, right? We used to see this with the LeBron Cavs, where it was the LeBron show and everybody else was just ready in the shooter stance, ready to catch a pass in the pocket. He's not that guy. So they do need to be more engaged offensively. I don't know what it is, but it was really interesting last night to see the game really flipped on its head when Zion was on the bench. Just catching the recap, I didn't watch the whole game, but it was interesting to see that. Not what I would have expected, because we talked a lot about how if Zion plays 60 games, this is a really good Pelicans team. I don't know. Maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe they'll get it going. Ryan, any thoughts on the Pellies?
Yeah, it is interesting. I think Zion Williamson's been pretty good, generally speaking. I think he's looked good with the little bit of space he needs to finish at the basket. Sometimes no space. I do think it's an interesting comment about his playmaking ability. You know, people talk about point Zion. We heard that with basically his last healthy season. I don't think assists are the metric for like playmaking. Yeah, of course. He's only played 3 games this year. Got to get him in every game.
Yeah.
I think him and Brandon Ingram are a great combo. I don't think they complement each other well, and I think it's really tough, right? It's like if you identified that, if you said this is a problem, right? Bi and Zion, we don't think we can win with them two at the same time. Who do you get rid of? Because both have like huge flaws. Where Zion, you don't know if he's going to be there. I think he's a better player when he's healthy, if he is healthy. And Bi has been like a guy who for years we thought would be a superstar, and has just been like a fringe all-star for a long time. And it's like, are you just going to tread water with Bi? Because this team pushed their chips in with the CJ McCollum move. I think that is really interesting, and I think they're in a tough spot. The West is so difficult right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think defensively they have some concerns. Zion being a big part of that. Zion is Jonas.
Good.
I like Jonas Valanciunas. He can play. I think he's good on that team too. He spreads the floor a little bit, can shoot. I think they have to wait it out just because Zion's just came back, right? I think you got to give it at least like half a season and see what you have, because you're in a bad spot if this is not what the team looks like. Because I think you have to make really tough decisions, personnel wise, and probably even like rotation wise. Like, do you have to start staggering Bi and Zion because like they're just such a counter to each other? Because they've only played 2 games together this season, so I have no idea. But that's my concern there. But I think Zion will be all right. And the only way to develop as a playmaker is have crazy natural ability or to play, and he needs to do the latter to find out if he can do it. So yeah, it is interesting for sure. But I do like the team. I think Jordan Hawkins has been pretty good for them. I think it's been a good draft pick. My guy Dyson Daniels getting some minutes. I'm happy about that. I just wish that guy could score to save his life. If he had to score to save someone's life, it would be bad for that person. That person would be in trouble. They got a lot of guys with defensively, but they just don't have the offensive talent. I'm going to reserve judgment on the team as a whole till Trey Murphy III comes back, because I think he's a huge piece. I think he's a big connective piece for them as a bailout and as a super efficient shooter and long defender. So I think when I can see that as their team, that's the 5, right? Or the 9-man rotation, I'll give a better opinion. But I do think it's a concern with the fit with Zion and Bi, and maybe Zion's playmaking is the concern there.
Yeah. Most importantly, can they be a top 4 team in the West?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they're one of the 11 I've listed. But would it shock you if they were? It wouldn't shock me. No. I mean, the team on paper is really good.
Yes, absolutely.
And luckily, they play games on paper.
Yes. Oh, man. All right. Well, before we get to closing thoughts here, let's get picks for Thursday night. Bentley, I'm going to go your way first. We've got Titans. We've got Steelers in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh coming off a tough loss at home this past Sunday. Do you see the Titans replicating that magic they found with Will Levis last week against a inferior Falcons defense. Let's be honest about it. They're not the Pittsburgh Steelers who can get after the quarterback. Can Will Levis keep that going? Are they going to knock off Pittsburgh 2 home losses in 5 days under Mike Tomlin?
Well, Mika Fitzpatrick is not playing, I don't believe. Joey Porter Jr. is not a good cornerback. TJ Watt is very good. Man, I'm so torn. I'm so torn on this game. I want Will Levis to be good because he's on my fantasy team. But I didn't like him that much coming out of college. I don't know, man. Give me Tennessee +3.
Yeah, I really feel like I was in the minority on Will Levis because I liked him coming out of college, and we'll see. It's one game. I'm not going to pat myself on the back for one game, but he looked pretty good last week. If he can keep it going, we'll see. We'll see. Tennessee's been starved for a guy to replace Tannehill for about 4 years.
Yeah. Kenny Pickett 6-0 in primetime games in his career, by the way.
Primetime Pickett. Okay. Yep. So you've got the Steelers. Are you laying the points? Are they going to cover?
No, I've got Tennessee +3.
Tennessee +3. Okay.
Right? That's what it is, yeah?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Pittsburgh's laying 3. So you have Tennessee. Do you have them money line?
The issue is like they could be up by 15 for the first 55 minutes of this game
and then lose the fucking game.
And then Kenny Pickett scores a touchdown, and then TJ Watt forces like a fumble score. Like,
yep.
This game is impossible. It's an impossible game to predict on a Sunday.
Look at the line Vegas set, man. Home field's 3 points in the NFL. Vegas feels the same way.
It's crazy.
Who's gonna win? Who's gonna win outright? I know you're taking the points with Tennessee, which is probably the smart play. Who's gonna win?
Give me Tennessee.
All right.
Give me Tennessee.
Ryan?
My girlfriend is a diehard Steelers fan, so I cannot. I cannot sit here close within earshot and say the Steelers will not be winning the game. So I'm gonna take my own line. I'm gonna take Steelers. Let's lay 14 points. Let's just. It's a blow.
Okay.
It's a blowout. Kenny Pickett. Not sure if he's
points now.
Yeah, trying to do my best over here. Kenny Pickett, not sure he's the guy, but he's the guy tonight. That's what I'll say.
All right.
He's not the guy. He's the Steelers guy.
Yeah, he's not the guy you need. He's the one you deserve.
Yeah.
Fun fact about the Steelers.
Love it.
Do you know who the last quarterback to throw a touchdown to Deontay Johnson was?
Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph or what's his face? They used to play for the Bears. Mitch Trubisky. Please don't use that language.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Oh, God.
Really?
Ben Roethlisberger. That's awful.
Deontay Johnson doesn't have a touchdown in like 18 months.
Well, good thing I'm starting him tonight.
That's a tough go.
That is a wild stat.
He's not a touchdown guy, though.
No, he's not.
He's not.
He had no touchdowns last year.
Correct.
Ooh.
Him being back is big for Pittsburgh.
It is.
Yeah. For sure.
It is.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a great decoy.
Yeah. Can't get the ball to him.
I'm going to take Pittsburgh to win this game, but I'm going to take the points with Tennessee if I'm wagering. Give me 16-15 Pittsburgh over Tennessee, probably in the way that Bentley described. It'll be 15-9 with about a minute and a half left, and TJ Watt will strip the ball from whoever's got it. Doesn't matter who. Will strip the ball from whoever's got it, maybe even scoop it himself, and they'll win on a defensive touchdown because that's what Pittsburgh does. They win so ugly all the time.
Special teams, yeah, they
win
this year especially.
Yeah,
Ben Jones, good player. Yep, he's
good player.
He's pretty
going back
good.
to the Pellies. We got a comment. We don't want to see him in the playoffs.
That's true. Don't want to play. It's as if the playoffs has teams that are good.
Right.
Occasionally they do.
All right, well, let's get to some closing thoughts, man. Ryan, what you got for us on the way out the door?
I said my main one with the Bob Knight and Walter Davis comments. Like I said, sad for everything. Early in the NBA, we don't know much. I try not to fall into the trap of judging teams off of such a short sample size, or players especially. I think there's still a lot of like third year guys that I'm starting to develop opinions on. That's really what I'm looking at right now. Mostly because I'm a Rockets fan and we got a lot of guys in that range. But I was intimately tracking that draft, so I think that's probably what I've been mostly focused on because we're not winning a championship this year, so looking at the development of those guys, and I think that's been interesting. But everything else, you can't really tell too much. Like I said about Memphis, I think it's too early. I think the only thing I'll say is I'm happy that Cooper Flagg went to Duke. I'm going to steal that from Bentley because I know he wants to say it. I think it was a good choice for him. It's a university that likes people like him.
Yes, they do.
Yes, good players is what
Great
I'm implying.
Basketball players.
Yeah, that's what
exactly what he meant.
Like Christian Leitner,
JJ
Redick, yeah, the Plumlees,
Grayson Allen,
yeah, all the great Duke basketball players.
Yep.
Yeah, you mentioned it's too early, but I'm gonna be honest with you. One of my guilty pleasures is Overreaction Monday, as we call it in the NFL season. But I love like way too early hot takes because they're fun and they're also fun to look back on and be like, haha, look how wrong we were. Yeah, I love them, but understand completely, right? Week 1, we don't know shit yet. We're still learning a lot about how the season's gonna go, but it is fun. It is fun to overreact to. Luka and Kyrie are the best of friends, and it's going to be that way the whole season, right?
The armchair point guard.
Yeah. Bentley, what do you got for us on the way out here?
So I know that some people have mentioned that we talk about gambling a little too much on the show, but that's all right. I'm going to bring gambling back into it. Currently, you can get the Miami Heat to miss the playoffs at plus 215.
Ooh.
So if you think that this start is real and they are not a good team, put your money where your mouth is and play some ducats on them to miss the playoffs. You also can get the Lakers to miss the playoffs at plus 250. I don't think the Lakers are good. There are a lot of really good teams in the West. I don't think the Lakers are among. They're definitely not a top 4 team in the West. I can tell you that.
So I didn't pay attention to this last year. As a fellow degenerate, I'm kind of ashamed to say I didn't pay attention to this last year. But is Vegas counting the play-in games as making the playoffs?
So the note that they have listed here on FanDuel Sportsbook says settled on final 8 teams in the playoffs for each conference after any possible play-in tournament has concluded.
Okay. So no play-in teams unless they get to a series. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I didn't check that last year, and I feel ashamed that I had to ask that question live on the air. But
it's okay.
We're here. That's why we're here.
We all learn.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, for Ryan and Bentley and the rest of us here at Backyard Sports, this has been another wonderful episode of Backyard Buckets. We've got a full week in the books. We'll see you all next week. We'll probably know a little more about each team as we go here progressively week to week. But we appreciate everybody in the comments section, the Cody Zeller fans, Dad, Robert Leader. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We are